Hey, Off-Season After Dark fans, glad to have you back here for episode 39. And we have our fourth venture into the MAC conference here. We have Mark Welgerai to talk Central Michigan Chippewa football today. So he runs the Sidelines page. You can find him on Twitter, X, whatever you prefer. And glad to have him here. It's always fun to talk about teams and fan bases that we've not touched on so far. And we're slowly chipping away. Say we're almost a quarter of the way or about that through the NCAA. And obviously the goal is to get all of them done by some point. But Mark, glad to have you here. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what got you following Central Michigan football, what got you covering them and in the space, and then where they can find you. And as usual, all of your contacts and stuff, I'll tag you and everything so it's easy for them to follow you.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. Really cool experience for sure. And yeah, so I've been a fan of college football since genuinely I can remember. Everything about it. I will say I was born into an MSU, Michigan State family. For anyone that's from Michigan, it's usually one or the other. But then I remember one of my first games I remember actually was in 2009. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but the Chippewas
I do know where you're going, yes.
Yep. Chippewas came right in the Spartan Stadium and beat them. And I remember I was I think 5 years old at the time. And I remember being like, wow, that's these guys are tough, man. That's sick,
That was I believe that was Butch Jones's last year.
Yep. Yeah.
It was. Left, yes.
Right before Brian Kelly, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, or maybe right.
No, it would have been right before. It would have been right before Dan Enos.
Yep, you're right. You're right. But yeah. So I was kind of loosely followed the program for a while, and then I'm a student at the university right now, currently.
Yep.
And that's really, my freshman year was 2023, and that's really when I took off. I couldn't get enough of CMU football. Just being around here and being in that atmosphere, I instantly fell in love in a way I didn't really think was possible to even fall in love with the college football program, And especially a lot of people look at the MAC as being this or being that, but at the end of the day, it's great football,
Yeah. And most of the G6 conferences are. I think they've done a good job capitalizing on the midweek games and gotten more viewership towards their conferences. So it's always fun to watch and, pay attention to those schools.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like that's also a pretty polarizing topic among MAC fans is the midweek MACtion, People that love it. People that hate it, really hate it. So, yeah.
So I don't know if you knew this, but the Sun Belt is doing one midweek game next year, and they haven't for years.
Oh,
so,
really?
There was the occasional Thursday night, but it was rare, basically whenever ESPN wanted to do it. But it's one of the weeks, I think October 20th or October 7th. It's one of the mid-October weeks when everybody in the conference has a cross-division game. So Marshall, we're in the East. You play two teams from the West. We play South Alabama at home on a Tuesday. So, but it's like you said, it's the love it or hate it. I think it's great because then I can watch more games on the weekend and very cool to see the novelty. But some people just hate it. We're turning into the MAC and Q, so we don't need to do that. Spare me that. But also, I get it too, even though I disagree. For me, it's cool to have it, but you're right. It's there's no in between on if you support the midweek games.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No one's neutral on it.
No, not at all. And I think that's different in CUSA. It seems like they're more unanimously behind it.
Interesting.
I think, and part of that might be because for them, it would be the only way of getting meaningful TV viewership, especially in the location a lot of those schools are in, whether you're in Alabama, Texas, elsewhere. Those teams aren't going to be watched on Saturdays because you're going to have bigger games in town going on.
Right.
Finding that midweek game has been better for them. And also I think with most of those schools being, or not most, but a good chunk of them being newer to the FBS, you have to find that niche to get eyes on you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the first few years in the FBS, it's like it's scary. You know what I mean?
Is.
You're kind of like hoping to tread water and kind of like grasp on, you know. So I definitely get that. And it's kind of interesting the position that the CUSA is in, because like you are right. I didn't really think about that before, but it is like pretty precarious in the sense that a lot of these schools are new. A lot of them are like dominated at the FCS level, but now it's like, all right, prove it. And I think a lot of people are like, the average college football viewer might be like, oh, this is pretty, like, you know, that is pretty cool being able to see that, you know, more eyes on the game.
And you have some teams who, you know, Jacksonville State especially, and then Kennesaw, who've done a very good job in transitioning from the FBS or FCS. Delaware and Missouri State both had good year ones. Sam Houston was good in year one, then really regressed last year. I had a Sam Houston guy on a couple months back here. But yeah, they're kind of all over the place there. But back to CMU. So one of the main things I focus on here, and then also in writing for Mike Farrell Sports, talk a lot about the coaching carousel. Last year was year one for Matt Drinkall, and coming off of a 4-8 season, I think you have to be happy with the 7-6.
Oh yeah,
pretty good year one for him.
Yeah, pretty emphatically, like, yes. I know a bunch of my friends and everyone in the space was like absolutely like electric. Like our only thing that we wanted from last season was
bowl game.
Bowl game. Bowl eligibility. That was like it was approaching my last year or two of college, and I was like, I am not going out without a bowl game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, not only did we get there, we had looked probably the most competitive we had since like 2019, if not even maybe.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know,
and really looking at your 6 losses, it was 3 Power 4 teams in Pittsburgh, Michigan, Northwestern, Western Michigan, who won the conference, Toledo, who's always good, and Akron, who was a pleasant surprise last year. Nobody thought they'd be that good. So there weren't any, bad losses per se. You didn't blow any games that you should have won. They were 6 legit games that 3 you'd expect, that really 4 of them you'd probably expect to lose. And then the other 2 just happened, but nothing bad with them. Like and the mark, I think, of a team who is fundamental, you win all the games you're supposed to, and you did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I mean, I'll say minus the Akron game, but I think almost in a way we needed that. Because if you remember, that was pretty early in MAC play. I think that was like...
I'm looking at the schedule right now,
That was
second MAC game. Yeah.
And I think we kind of needed a punch in the face a little bit, see what we were... Because in my opinion, that game, I was like, oh my gosh, this was bad, Same old chips. We're regressing back to our mean. And then next game, boom. I believe if my memory serves me right, we played Bowling Green.
Yes. Yeah. Bowling Green whooped UMass, then had the, and Western Michigan only lost the 1 conference game, and you guys took them to the wire. That was a heck of a game.
I was actually at that game, funny enough.
I remember one of the games I watched later in the year was the win against Buffalo. And I think Pete Lembo's a heck of a coach. They're a pretty solid team. And that was in that realm where whoever won it, it really gave you a leg up and going to the bowl game. You guys were kind of in a similar spot at the time, record-wise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were both 1 game out from bowl eligibility, and even like one at the time, we were, I believe, 1 or 2 spots away from being in the MAC championship. So that game was it was almost in a way like a play in to the MAC tournament, or championship.
Yeah,
basketball on my mind.
Fair. Yeah.
So the game had a lot of expectations, and also I think we just came into that knowing exactly what we had to do. Like, we had to take care of business, and our defense was just lights out that game.
Okay.
Because I had the pleasure of going to all of our home games last year, and then the Michigan game, and then the Western game. So I got to see a lot of CMU football.
Nice. No, that's one of the benefits of the MAC, and I think the Sun Belt still has it within the divisions, but they're really the only 2 conferences now that have even tried to maintain some semblance of geography, where it's easier to travel to away games. You're not doing that in most places. Yeah, I mean, like for you, it's whether it be EMU, Ball State, Miami, not unreasonable traveling.
No.
For me, you know, ODU, JMU, Appalachian State, not awful road games. But if you're in any other conference, I mean, you're not going from Gainesville, Florida to Columbia, Missouri. You're not going from Eugene, Oregon to Rutgers for a conference game.
Right. Yeah. Travel like 200 miles across the country, you know?
2,000.
2,000. Yeah. What am I talking about? Yeah. 2,000 miles. Yeah.
You're not going from, you know, El Paso, Texas to Oregon, you know, Corvallis, Oregon for a game. Yeah. But so let's unpack last season a little bit. We talked about, you know, being a pleasant surprise. When Matt Drinkall was hired, what was the vibe? Were most people around campus happy with that? He, you know, O-line coach at Army for a lot of people that are not familiar, had been at Army for a number of years with Munkin. So what was he the favorite from the get-go, and were most people behind that right away?
I will say I have a unique perspective as well, because I was actually at his introductory press conference. Okay. And when I tell you, I don't know, for any of my viewers, any of my fellow Chips, the McGurk Arena is our basketball arena, and there's like an atrium that's a pretty big area, completely full of people.
Nice. That's always
just
good
waiting
to see.
Him talk. You know what I mean? And so I think from the get-go, we were so just ready for change. I will be honest, like just very, very ready for change.
Yeah, and I like, you know, Jim McElwain, I think was a heck of a coach, but absolutely. the reunion at your old school doesn't always work. I'm curious, how's it going to work for Scott Frost? How's it going to work for Rich Rod? It's not always easy to go home.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because you got to think the expectations are higher, but yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I will say we were just very ready for a change. What had been going on and worked in the past wasn't working anymore. And I think everyone was excited, but also a little nervous in a way. Because like for any of us that don't, like any of the viewers that don't know this, CMU is a very proud program. Like historically, we're a very strong group of 6 program.
Yeah.
And so the expectations here are high. If you're not contending for the MAC championship, if you're not at least winning bowl or making it to bowl games, like you're out of here, you know?
Yeah. And I think part of that history has been that, you know, for the last 20 years, they've done an extremely good job of identifying younger head coaches or guys, and they've become a stepping stone in some ways, but in a good way. If you're a consistent I mean, Arkansas State did the same thing, and you're better for it. I mean, you guys had Mike DeBoer, who coached in the NFL as an assistant for years, Brian Kelly, Butch Jones, Dan Enos, McElwain, who, you know, had been at Florida, and so on. So that's a lot of big name coaches for one program to have at the G6 level. So that's impressive.
And I don't know if you know this actually, but Robert Saleh also and Matt LaFleur were both grad assistants at CMU.
I knew the Saleh one. I didn't know the LaFleur one.
Yep, because he's from Mount Pleasant actually.
Okay.
So, yeah, he's a hometown guy.
Okay.
So he was here, and then a plethora Sharon Moore, that was at Michigan. He was our O-line coach for a couple of years. So a lot of talent has come through here. And that's the thing I don't think a lot of people really realize is we're not a lifeless program. You know, our fans have expectations and we need to see the product. And that's that's honestly what I think drew everyone to Drinkall is he wasn't coming here and being like, we're going to win X amount of games and blank amount of whatever. He was like, from day one, from the first minute, his whole thing was about revising the process. The process of what had been happening for CMU football was not working. So he was going to go in, and he still is, on the ground level at the most basic foundation and build us a strong foundation to build off of. That's why I think a lot of fans last year were like upset with how, I'll say, conservative we played at times. But it really, we were playing, the whole point of last season was a building season. You know what I mean? The fact that we ended up making it to the bowl game, you know, playing a competitive first half, that was all the cherry on top, you know?
Yeah. And especially based on his background and where he came from, the positions he's coached, it may have been unrealistic to expect fireworks and really, put the throttle down. It was about getting the system in place, building a culture, and setting the table for future years.
Oh, absolutely. And I can say that emphatically, we've done that already. Like,
Good. It seems like it. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can just tell, like, I'll say this staff versus the old staff. Like, I'm lucky enough to I'm starting to get to know them more. I'm an intern with the team.
Yeah.
And you can just tell the energy in the building is different. Like, these guys that are putting in 70, sometimes even 80-hour work weeks, they're still excited to come into work, excited to get with the guys, excited to get going. Like, that's completely different. And it's just like the culture is better. Like, everything about the program is just on the upswing, in my opinion.
Awesome. No, that's good to hear. And, after, because it, like we said, MACtion was great, but things went stale. And I think that reset was needed. And it's good to see that they made it, such a quick transition. It was pretty seamless. And the energy got, back in the program very quickly, which does not always happen. It sometimes takes longer.
And also, the remarkable thing, in my opinion, is that Drinkall was able to get all of these guys bought in. And if you remember, he didn't bring anyone from Army.
Yeah.
For the most part. Like, it was all new guys that were here, and he was still able – I believe I heard from one of my colleagues that he met individually with all of the players. And that's why a lot of them that were in the portal, like Jordan Kwiatkowski, decided to come back. And we all know how that went. He ended up having the first – I believe it was either first or second team All-MAC, and he had like 100 tackles. I mean – and the fact that ridiculous more tackles. I do remember that. Yeah. So the fact that you can get these guys that were like, let's say an old head coach promised you X, new head coach comes in. A lot of coaches might be like, "Oh, I'm just going to clear house," but he took that time to really develop a relationship with these players. And I think that's really the biggest difference.
That's impressive. Yeah, that's good, and I think it also shows that he might be pragmatic, which you have to be, because understanding coming from a place like Army, you're not going to bring as many guys with you by nature as you might from other programs. So being able to navigate that is impressive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, especially in this wild west of like NIL and all this crazy stuff. You know what I mean?
And that kind of is a good segue into the next topic. Talking about the roster and portal this past off season, where just based on the financial standing of a lot of the MAC schools, they're not going to be able to keep a lot of their stud underclassmen. You're going to see them portal to bigger schools. CMU certainly lost some guys, like everybody did, but they also handled it better than most teams did as well. They didn't lose any QBs in the portal and running back wise, you lost Cornist, but that's it. Biggins graduated, but you return, Townsend, who had, a lot of meaningful touches last year, played quite a bit. And portal wise, what was why don't you tell the audience, you know better than me, how the portal, by and large went last year, and what's Drinkall's philosophy in the portal, if you know?
So I think for the most part, Drinkall, like, it's funny because on paper, he seems like a very old school, like, this is how we do it, but he's not opposed to using the portal whatsoever. Like, because at the end of the day, people forget he's a young coach. He's in his 40s, you know what I mean? Yeah. So he knows, like, that's really the biggest thing that differentiates coaches that work and coaches that don't. It's like, are you going to use the portal, or are you going to pretend like you don't have to? You know what I mean? Because that's just where and that's where we're at right now. The portal's a necessity. But yeah, I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but I feel from seeing the last now 2 off seasons, he's not afraid to use the portal whatsoever.
Okay.
And we got a couple studs, let me tell you. We got a couple guys that I think are really going to show out this next season.
One of the things I ask the G6 guest like yourself is the portal philosophy getting those guys from P4 schools that are not starting, or is it getting FCS guys that were very successful, or is it somewhere in between, a mix of both?
I'd say it's somewhere in between. Like, you kind of want to look at like you can't just be like, wow, this guy came from, X Big Ten school. He must be good because sometimes they slip through the cracks, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of got to look a little further, but I would say we probably.
I did see they brought in Foster from Michigan State at receiver.
Yep.
And then the Von Blue, the running back from Liberty, were the two offensive guys that stood out to me.
Oh yeah, they'll be good. I like our running back. It's actually insane, our running back group right now. Like just watching them and like the few times I've gotten to see them so far in lifts, like they're looking nuts, moving some seriously crazy weight. Like it's gonna be a really fun season. Like I'm telling you, it's gonna be a fun season. But for the most part, in my opinion, the two that really stand out to me are Jaden Clairvaux. I think from Holy Cross.
Yes.
He like just man amongst boys, genuinely. Like you can just tell he's like super twitchy, but also not afraid of contact whatsoever. And so I'm really excited. Obviously, like I said before, very loaded running back room, but I'm excited to see what he does for us. I think especially pairing that with the offensive line too.
The O-line wise, that DeSanto from Eastern Illinois was a pretty good FCS player. He was one that popped to when I was looking at that.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to bring him up too. He's also like one of the guys I'm really looking forward to seeing, like actually start getting some playing time, because unfortunately, not unfortunately, but Drinkall is offensive line guy, right? It's in his DNA. He was offensive line coach. I think something like 5 of our coaches on staff, including coordinators, have experience as offensive line coaches. Okay. Like this is a program, and Central, we've developed amazing offensive line talent throughout the year.
Yeah, so that's something. Eric Fisher. Yep.
Yeah. Eric Fisher, first overall. Yep. Bernard Ryman, he was taken, I think, in the second round, and then we made some, for the Colts.
Yep.
And so that's the thing, like that's our DNA is like. So Drinkall really harped on that, and that's why you saw a lot of guys from last season enter the portal on the line, and he kind of brought in more players sort of play with his style, and that style is mean and violent. Like you got to have a mean streak to you,
I saw they brought in 2 O-linemen from Georgetown, which considering it was 2, that made me wonder, did they bring in an assistant coach or someone on the personnel side who had a background at Georgetown? When it's multiple guys, it always makes me wonder about these questions.
So not to my knowledge, no. Okay. I don't believe so, but potentially maybe like an analyst or I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
I don't believe so. But I also thought that was like notable too, Yeah, and from that group, Trevor Swan, I think, is going to be the standout from that group.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Like he just I'm judging right now. I'm mainly judging from what I'm seeing in the weight room. But I mean, these guys are putting up like serious numbers.
Yeah. Now at can't forget the QB spot. Obviously lost Labus, the Iowa transfer. Will Angel Flores be the guy, or does Glasser have a chance to start, you think?
I think it's Glasser's job to lose.
Oh, okay.
Personally, that's my analysis on it. Like going into the Pittsburgh game, he was kind of our main guy aside from Labus that was passing the ball a ton, So I think, and also like CMU for those that don't know, we run a really interesting quarterback personnel. I'd say we don't have just one guy that leads our entire offense, and we also don't really do a quarterback by committee. It's like somewhere in between, sort of, where based on what we're seeing from the defense, we'll switch out guys, or based on what we want to do. Like, for example, Labus last year was mainly like our guy that would like stretch the field when we did. Yeah. And then Flores was a super slippery runner when he was healthy. I mean, I think to answer the question, I think we're going to see Glasser be more of our like 1-2 down kind of guy.
And he's a thicker, big body guy that can take more of a pounding. And sure, near the goal line probably will be the guy too.
Yep. I think him. I also think Flores too. I mean, he's seriously like an amazing runner. Like watching him in person, like you would think he's a running back or like a slot guy or something, but he's a quarterback,
That was a situation where under the old, previous year's format where we had a spring portal, I had wondered if one of those guys would have left when they weren't the starter, but good for you guys to keep both of them on the roster.
Yeah, I thought that was a really impressive job by our staff. Like those are two guys right there. Like Glasser is still young. Like he's still technically, I think he's a redshirt freshman now.
Yes.
Still,
yeah.
So he still has a ton of eligibility. And I'm like, you'd look at him and think he's a 5th-year senior though. Like genuinely, like 6'3", probably like 230.
Listen at 6'2", 230. Yeah, what I'm looking at here. So yeah.
But like even like from these last few, like because he's now been with the program, I think if I'm correct, since 23, I think was his freshman year or 24. Okay. So he's been with the program now because he was a McElwain guy.
Yes.
So he's been with us for a few years now, and he's really really understands the playbook, really got all that stuff down. Like I saw it personally, I think he's our guy going forward. But there's still off-season football to get there, so a lot can change.
Yeah. And what about we talked the rest of the offense on the defensive side of the ball, where you lost a lot more guys.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at that depth chart on the D-line, you really, you return Dema and Bird that played most games. Everybody else is gone. Linebacker, Xavier White's back. Nobody else that's back really played significant snaps. And then at the defensive back spot, I saw Jackson is back, but he was about it. Unless I'm missing someone, I could be at the defensive back spot.
I believe you're right. I think we did. We lost a lot of the DBs, a lot of line. We kind of did lose a lot of everybody,
Yeah.
And like Jordan Kwiatkowski, Michael Heldman.
Yeah.
Although like our main contributors, and then even a lot of our depth guys, unfortunately, to graduation.
Yeah.
I will say though, I think we're going to have an interesting look from our defense this year because it's pretty young. Most of our starters are sophomores and juniors this upcoming year, as of right now, and we got a bunch of guys from the portal that I think are going to especially for our defensive back room.
Yeah, and you kind of had to there because you lost your 2 top corners to the portal with Carroll went to TCU, and who was one of them went to Northwestern. I'm blanking on the name though.
Ricard or no, he's still on the. Diaz Fernandez.
Yes, that was it. Yep, longer. I knew it was a longer name. Yep, that was it.
Yep. Yeah, no, that was really unfortunate, both of them, honestly. But I don't know. I don't want to speak for every Group of 6 fan, but I feel like if you're going to lose a guy to the portal, at least sits better that they went to a Power 5 school.
100%. Yeah, like looking at those guys going to those schools, you can't really fault them. It probably financially made sense, and by any metric, they're bigger school. Big 10 and Big 12, they're bigger programs. Yeah,
right.
So I think it's palatable. Yeah, no shame there.
And that's kind of what I like about this new position we're sort of positioning ourselves in at Central. It's like you want to win MAC games, win some championships, compete, get to some bowl games, and you will get drafted if you're really that good. Come here. And then, come here and see what's up. And then I think it's also interesting that the few guys that did leave, for the most part, we had a couple other guys that left, but for the most part went to Power 4 schools, went to bigger schools, went up. And so I think that's appealing to unfortunately, this new brand of college football athlete that might be thinking this is more of a step, And
I hope it doesn't turn into that, even though to some extent the G6 on the whole is going to be a stepping stone for a decent amount of guys. I think it's unavoidable at this point, and you can't. I think so, but I think it's one of those things though. And I mean, we've seen from last season with, again, Kwiatkowski, Heldman, a bunch of those McElwain guys that they had offers. Kwiatkowski could have gone to Coastal, for example. Okay.
He got in the bag there, but he decided to come back, and it treated him well. And I think guys are going to see that. We are getting our main guys coming back, and they're not just having fluke seasons. They're,
I think for guys like him who you've played multiple years, and if you only have 1 year to play, those guys you could persuade because they bought in. It's those guys that come in as freshmen or sophomores and play really well. Tough to keep those guys that have multiple years left because they presumably will get bigger offers because of multiple years available from other schools.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, But you're right. Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's if you really, I feel like it shows a lot about a guy's character, though.
Personally. Not doubting that at all. I think so. So, we're talking about the roster now, moving forward to looking at this upcoming season. What would you say, like in your mind, what are realistic expectations? And then what do you think is the absolute ceiling? Let's talk about that.
I'd say reasonable expectations would be 7-5, 6-6. I think would be extremely reasonable expectations. And honestly, like I'm a Drinkall truther. I believe in him. I think he's gonna do amazing things for us. I think our ceiling is 9-3. Okay. Genuinely, I think we could, win.
That schedule looks tough to like. You avoid Toledo, who are having changes of their own. Mm-hmm. You play the other tough. You have Western. You play Buffalo. You play Miami. Like the other tough teams are on the docket. So
absolutely,
yeah.
But if you notice that Western and Miami are both at home, Miami, Ohio, so
2 weeks in a row. Yeah.
So that was going to be a really fun 2 weeks in Mount Pleasant for sure. But
absolutely.
But yeah, and if I'm correct, that's late October, which like the best football is late October, November. Like
October 17th, 24th. Yep. They're your two last games in October because you guys have a bye on Halloween.
Yep. Yeah, so that's going to be really interesting. And those are two teams that, they were in the MAC championship last year. So they're absolutely, especially as much as it pains me in my heart to say this, Western is going to be pretty good this year too, probably.
Yeah, they're one. I was low going into last year. I was low. I don't think many people thought they'd be as good as they were. Mm-hmm. I was lower on Taylor. They were really salty last year. Now, of course, they lost their D coordinator to the Chargers, I believe. Yep. But they're going to be good again. Like, they should be salty again.
Yeah.
I think Taylor and Lance Taylor's at that point where you have another year where you win 9-10. You might be looking at a bigger job now.
But it is interesting, though, not to talk on the Broncos for too long because, we don't mix very well, But he also signed, if I'm not mistaken, he signed a 4-year extension for Western.
Okay.
That'll make that interesting.
I believe you. Anybody that really wants him will pay to get him out of it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm not saying I'm just saying that's interesting to look at, to notice,
Yeah.
Because that'll be an interesting year for him. And hopefully I think having them at home will be huge. Because if you go back to last year's game, we were a play away from beating them.
Yep.
Not a quarter, not like a moment, not a drive, but a play away from beating them.
Yeah.
And we just, we couldn't, unfortunately. Yeah. So I think a lot of those guys are coming back, especially on offense. I think we're going to feel some type of way about it, for sure. And if I'm one of those guys, I'm like, we got to beat Western this year. I don't care if that's the only game we win. We've got to beat Western this year,
Yeah. No, I follow you.
Because I've been to a lot of rivalries. I've been to, the Lions and the Packers, the Michigan State. And I'm telling you, as a student walking around in the tailgates in Kalamazoo, the hatred is unreal. Like, it's genuinely unreal. We had beer cans getting thrown at us. People were flipping us off. Like, people don't think it's anything that crazy, but the battle for the cannon, man, something else.
That's good to hear. Obviously I knew about it, but I didn't know it was that intense. So that's fun to hear. It's always nice to hear those, kind of hidden gem games that are fun. But looking at the schedule, like I said, no slouch. You just non-conference wise, you open up at New Mexico. They were a revelation last year. Jason Eck is a phenomenal coach. Nobody thought they'd be as good as they were, and they were really good last year.
Yeah, that's a game that really kind of keeps me up at night a little bit. I won't lie to you, because that's really that's a game that really could go. I'm not going to say it's a total toss-up, but it really could go either way. It could really catapult us into a strong start in the year. We go because remember last year, San Jose State was another West Coast, west part of the country team that was looking to be pretty good, and we ended up beating them. And I think that's ultimately what catapulted us into having as success, or that was at least the first step in what catapulted us.
Absolutely fair. Yeah.
And so I think that's those games against other G6 and then obviously FCS teams, those are kind of for us are a little bit feast or famine, because it's like you have an opportunity to go to a team that you can beat absolutely, and it's like, what do you have? Can you do it on the road? Like, are the lights too bright? And so I think that's going to be a really telling game for other seasons.
Yeah, I think so. And both teams, will be going into the year expecting to go to bowl games like they did last year. I mean, you have two teams that the basement, seller expectations are to win 6 games, and whoever wins that'll get a leg up in doing that.
Oh yeah.
Then you have Colgate, your FCS game is week 2. I mean, that's a must win. You'd say that for pretty much any FBS team. Wyoming will be an interesting one because they also were, they're a team who in the last decade, 5 years, they've had success, but they weren't fantastic last year. So, the Jay Sauvel's been there 2 years now after taking over for Craig Bowl, and they won 3 games, then they won 4 games last year. Another bad year, he may not keep his job. So I don't know what to expect a ton out of Wyoming.
Especially that, again, being at home.
Yeah.
I think that's like a 2-hour time difference for Wyoming.
Yeah, 2.
Or 3, 2 hours. So that's going to play a factor, depending on what time it is, because we don't know yet. Yeah. But that is a game that I know a lot of people in the space are like, oh, that should be an easy one for, like, talking about CMU. Yeah. Like, that should be an easy one for us. But, like,
I wouldn't say it's easy because their team's pretty fundamental, even though they weren't winning games. They're doing some things well.
Yeah, that's the thing that people don't understand. They also have a certain pedigree.
Yeah.
Success. Like you said, the last 10 years, like, overall, they've been a team that is consistent more than they're not. So that's the thing is this trend going to continue, or are we're just going to start seeing a ramp up? Yeah. Like, that first, like, honestly, the entire non-con for us and then also for them is going to be very, very interesting. Like, I think that's kind of going to really give us a good gauge on how good this team really is.
I think so. And that I do know. You obviously saw, I just mentioned the head coach is still there, but coordinator-wise, I think they have 2 new ones coming in. So we'll see what happens there. I know they brought the O coordinator was he was an analyst with the Buffalo Bills. And then on defense, actually one of the Petrinos is the D coordinator now at Wyoming. Jason maybe, but one of the Petrinos is the D coordinator anyway. It's Aaron Bull, the former head coach Craig's son, is the D coordinator now.
Gotcha.
That's it. So I knew it was a guy who had family in the Petrino is now there. He's the special teams coordinator and safeties head coach.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, I mean that if you'll be feeling good though, if you beat New Mexico and beat Wyoming, you're looking at 3-0, and that would be a massive start.
Oh, insane.
Even 2-1, you'd take it. I think at this point, going into Miami, which let's just call it what it is. It's the paycheck game.
It is.
No shame in it. Yeah.
I hate to say it, they were in the Natty last year.
Yeah.
So.
And at the G6 level, we all have to do it, or 99% of us have to take those paychecks. Marshall's first game is at Penn State.
Yep.
You know what it is. Yeah, exactly. It's the deal. Yeah.
I think that'll be an interesting opportunity again, though, for the guys, because, like, obviously Miami is a great program, like, amazing program, historically one of the best of all time. But I think it's still interesting, like, getting that feel against a stronger opponent.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, obviously I don't believe we're going to win that game. But, like, depending on how you play can really shape how you feel about it. Like, if we get absolutely embarrassed, that's one thing. Yeah. But if you end up leaving that game, maybe you only lost by 2 touchdowns, 2 or 3 touchdowns. You can't help but feel a little good about yourself,
Yeah. So the way I look at it is on offense, if you either are okay at running or passing the ball, you can take a positive. On defense, if you do all right at stopping the run or the pass, you're okay. Yeah. And if you don't turn the ball over a ton, you can at least take, even in a 35-21 loss, you can still take some positives into the next week, which is the start of conference play.
Absolutely. And I also like that being the last game of non-con, because it's sort of like, all right, like we have kind of nothing to lose here. Let's show them what we're made of, you know?
I would rather it be, I get why teams do it like Marshall, where that game is week 1.
Mhm.
I hate that game being week 1 because you automatically know you're going to start off 0-1 and get your ass kicked in the first one. Nobody wants to. I would rather just play the FCS game week 1 and get it out of the way and get your win right away. But what can you do? I realize the availability and scheduling of the P4 teams takes precedent there, and they're going to schedule you when they want to.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. Like, do you want, $1.5, $2 million or not, right?
Yeah. I'm going to look at Miami's schedule before that, because that'll be so interesting enough. They have a conference game at Wake Forest the game before that, which being a conference game, they will not take that lightly. And
No.
Jake Dickert's a pretty good coach. So Wake will be, oddly enough, Miami opens the season with a conference game at Stanford, of all places. That's odd. And you almost wonder that I'm grasping at straws here, but you're after they play Wake Forest, and the next week Miami goes to Clemson. Like, could you get him in a look ahead spot there? That would be amazing if you could. Yeah.
Really? Who knows? Like, truthfully, what it's really going to come down to is how well we're executing passing the ball.
Yeah.
Because that's how
smart. You won't be able to be one dimensional and beat them. Their defensive front's going to be too good.
No, I mean, of course, because their defensive front is too good for Power 5 teams to be one dimensional. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And that, so that'll be because that is kind of interesting. I did not know that about the season. I mean, because there's never a 0% chance, right? There's always at least some ounce of a chance. So who knows? I mean, who knows? But I hope so. I hope we can at least leave that game having played a competitive game of football, genuinely. Like, that's really, or at least like just put it behind. Like, let's say it's an ugly loss like Michigan's last year. Put it behind us. It doesn't matter scraping that, because at the end of the day, like, that doesn't really tell you a lot about your team, in my opinion. If you get absolutely murdered by a bunch of 5-stars and 4-star players and SE, you know what I mean? Or ACC, like the one teams, I don't feel like that really tells you much as a group of 6 school.
And I'm glad you worded it that way, because that's a broader conversation I've had with one of my good buddies, who's in the space as well. And it regards both the MAC and CUSA. Mm-hmm. You don't know a lot about these teams until conference play starts, because of how happy they are and content they are to just get their ass kicked for paychecks in the non-con. It's like they might be a 3-1 team, might be garbage once conference play starts. A team that's 1-3, I mean, we've seen Miami and Toledo both do that before, where then they're the best teams in the conference just because of who you play out of conference and your propensity to play for a paycheck. Like, we don't know a ton about these teams until conference play starts. And that's why you'll also see them in games where it's maybe not a full-on blowout at the time, but looking like it. They'll pull the starters because we can't get these guys hurt for the conference schedule. And I get it. Like, it's understandable.
Yeah, it's just kind of like you got to know who you are and who you aren't, right?
Yep.
Like, to some extent. But yeah, that is kind of interesting how that really, and I'd say the Fun Belt is a little bit in that, like, not as much for sure. Like, you have a little more, probably a little less parity, but
and probably. And I think in the last couple of years, especially, the teams, and I'm not pat myself on the back being a Marshall guy, but a few of our teams in the East have had a lot of success the last 2-3 years, where the West hasn't been there as much. You had Troy was good last year, Louisiana the year before. Arkansas State with Butch Jones is always pretty consistent. The ceiling hasn't been there for those teams, whereas in the East we have had a lot of parity. So, I don't know.
So it's definitely interesting.
But it's tough. But like top to bottom, CUSA has had a lot of parity. Maybe because their top teams outside of Jacksonville State haven't been great, and then Kennesaw was last year. But where the MAC, you certainly have had more parity.
Oh, I mean, I'd say it's like the league of parity. I don't think we've had a return like a back-to-back champ since like 2004. Or no,
in writing one of my articles, I did come across, and I want to say it's I think in the last 17 years, I think there's been like 9 different conference champions or something like that. And yeah, nobody's went back to back. I think so. I was shocked that neither Chuck Martin nor Jason Candle ever went back to back. You'd have thought they would have at one point because of how successful they've been. Yeah.
Especially Jason Candle, because like you look at what he does at Toledo every single year, they're competitive. And if I'm not correct, I think he only has one MAC title, 1 or 2. And I swear they were in the game like 9 times. You know what I mean? Like they were in the game, like, or in that, championship game a good amount of times. But yeah, it's interesting. If my memory serves me right, I don't think he has that many titles.
He was at Toledo for 10 years and he won the conference twice and he only won the division 3 times. So they actually only played in the conference title game those 3 times, twice of which they went up. In 2017, they were 11-3, won the conference. And then 2022, they were 9-5. So that year they were 2-2 in non-con and then won the conference. So like that's the phenomenon we were just talking about. Yeah. Because you got rolled by Ohio State 77-21. Then you lost to San Diego State on the road in a season where they had Brady Hoke, the former Michigan connection. So they were all right then. But yeah, like odd that, he, in talking about how successful he was at the conference level, you can say, well, he wasn't great, but nobody has been. Like Chuck Martin is, he's the same though. He's won the division 3 times, the conference twice in the time he's been there. And both of them won the conference 4 or 5 years apart when they did it. So it wasn't even close to going back to back. Yeah.
That is kind of crazy to think about because, I think the CMU, we did that back in the early 2000s. But outside of that, I don't really think a lot of maybe one other team has done. I think NIU maybe in 13 and 14 when they had Lynch.
Yeah, they could have been. I was wondering, I'm originally a Minnesota guy, and when Jerry Kill was there, I'd wondered if they were pretty salty when he was there. But I don't remember if they were the last one that went. I don't remember who the last one that went back to back. But I remember in writing it's been over 15 years, I think. So
it's crazy,
But going into ceiling of 9-3, you said bottom, probably 6 or 7, which I think is fair. In looking at the rest of the conference, who do you expect to be near the top and competing? I feel like we've already talked about a few of them because you'd say, I think Miami, Western, Buffalo, or all 3 of them are going to be okay.
I think at the very least, for sure, in my opinion, I think you can basically lock it for the season. Western and Miami are going to be competitive, or at least Miami. I know again, this is their DNA.
I'm a big Chuck Martin fan. They're never going to drop off with him.
No, he's a great coach. I'll admit it. He's a great coach, But I think outside of there, obviously, I'm a little bit of a homer, but I think we're going to make some noise. I mean, we were in the contention until the very last game of last season.
Yeah. And
our biggest weakness was our offense for the most part, which on paper, if you really look at the stats, we had a pretty successful offensive season. Yeah. It was at times a tad bit. Some critics have said one-dimensional, but anyways, I can go on that rampage for about as long as you can let me do. But that was our biggest, I'd say, flaw. And we've, for the most part, retained the talent we do have and have added more talent to that group.
Agree. Yeah.
So I think that'll be really interesting to see, especially because that playbook is opening up a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, how's Akron going to be? Can they be, even though they were not world beaters last year, going 5-7 for them was a feat in itself. I remember my favorite tweet of last college football season was winning 5 games with this Akron team should qualify Joe Moorhead for sainthood.
Yeah.
And it's kind of true. Yeah.
I mean, because especially like this is an Akron team that won like 5 games their past 6 seasons.
Yeah.
Something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I love how they had the APR, fiasco, and they gave themselves the, we're going to do the 1-year bowl ban slap on the wrist.
It's like, all right.
Nobody thought they'd be even close, and it wouldn't matter at all. Then they actually got close to making it.
Yeah, right. Then it's like the most MACtion thing of all time. It's like the only year you made it in the last decade is the year you can't play. You know what I mean? Like, imagine. And I remember because of their goofy they were the one that had the last bye week. So their season was done way before everybody else, too. Yeah. Yeah, it was really goofy. Akron had like a week 13 bye week.
Yeah.
Week 12. And then Ball State, this sounds kind of random, but it connects. Ball State had a week 1 bye week. So like their season started week 2.
Yeah.
I think that's
I get having a week 1 bye if you're going to play a week 0, because I feel like the teams like Virginia goes to Brazil this year and has a week 1 bye then. But if you're not playing week 0, you would hate having a week 1 bye.
Yeah, because it's like watching all your friends having fun at the playground, and you can't.
And you've practiced for a month already. All you want to do is play a game at that
point. Oh yeah. So that is kind of funny, but I think.
How do you think? Sorry to cut you off. I would say there's 2 teams I want to. How do you think Sacramento State will be in their first year in the MAC and their first year in FBS?
So I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about Sac State as a team. I know that their university has poured a ton of resources into them to go to this level, the FBS level. Donors.
Alonzo Carter I think he'll be an all right coach. He was running backs coach for Brent Brennan at Arizona. He's been around the game for a long time. One of those guys that deserve a shot to be a head coach.
Oh, absolutely. Like I think long term they'll be fine. I think this is going to be a really rough season for them. Personally, that's my because you look at the team like eerily similar to maybe UMass in a sense, where like
that's tough.
UMass is a team that not too long ago was in the FCS. I mean, granted that was a substantially more amount of time ago, but it's that same thing of like people don't really understand how big of a gap there is between the FCS and the Group of 5. Like it's massive. You know what I mean? So I think they're in for a pretty rough season, especially just mainly not even to do skill wise. To be totally honest with you, it's the travel. I mean, they're all the way out in Sacramento, and the closest team I believe is Ball State in Indiana.
Jesus, yeah.
Because remember NIU left to the Mountain West, so. I believe if I'm correct, they've got a lot, and they're.
I'm gonna look at stat. Do you guys have them at home next year? Correct.
Yep, on a Tuesday in November.
Oh God.
So they'll probably. I don't know how they're gonna handle that honestly, because like for any of us that obviously most people know, like Michigan, it gets cold here. Mount Pleasant is about 2 hours north of Detroit, for example, 2.5 hours north of Detroit. It gets cold in November. So I think they're in for a treat.
It's wild to me that you don't see this as much, a conference game week 0, because they go to Eastern for their season opener.
Which I also thought was very interesting.
Them and North Dakota State had to really revamp their schedules because they jumped to FCS or from FCS so late. So like you have at Eastern, then week 1 you have your FCS game, then they have Fresno, then they play North Dakota State, but then the last week of the year, the Thanksgiving Saturday, they go to Hawaii for their last non-con games. It's so weird. Yeah,
it is kind of interesting. It is really weird. I mean, Hawaii though, just given their location, I can understand like their scheduling is always a little unique. You know what I mean? So that makes sense, but. I
also wonder, with 13 teams in the MAC having an odd number, not everyone can play a rivalry game that week. It's logical that they are the one outlier this season who doesn't play a rivalry game that week. So you got to find somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. Because, like, I mean, think about it. Like, I would say the interesting part about the MAC is that most teams have a natural rival.
Yes.
Like, I really can't think of one that doesn't, to be totally honest with you. Maybe like some fans might.
Who's Ball's natural rival?
I think it was NIU. So I guess now, because they had the battle for the bronze stock. Yeah. So now I guess I feel like for some reason my mind tells me Miami would be a natural rival for them, just given the geography, I guess.
Oddly enough, you guys play them rivalry week this year. I didn't realize that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking at the schedules you were talking. I was like, oh, God, you guys play them on Thanksgiving Saturday. Yeah.
That'll be interesting. I mean, that'll be interesting. And like, kind of like a little bit of hidden ball knowledge here, I'll say. We've played Ball State pretty, like, no matter how good or bad, for the most part, both teams have been. Like, our last couple matches have been pretty close, I feel like. So
they were so weird under Mike New, because you always felt like, hey, these guys look like they might be getting better. Then they just didn't win games. Like it was always the what if, like they're on the cusp, but then they just never got it done. But they were also, they could not keep their, once the portal started, they could not keep anybody decent on their team.
And it's unfortunate, but like, that's a lot of teams got especially in the MAC, got absolutely ravaged by the portal,
I think New is still with Bielema as an assistant in Illinois now. But
I believe so.
Me on that.
And then I think that'll be interesting. But like I was saying though, like every team sort of has for the most part, a natural rival or like a cluster. Like you have like obviously the Michigan MAC schools. Like I consider Eastern to be a pretty big rival still. A lot of Central fans sort of look at it like this pains me to say it, like a Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State kind of relationship. Where like you have the main two and then the offshoot. But I view Eastern as a rival just as much.
And I think part of that is up until Chris Creighton got there a decade ago, Eastern was absolutely atrocious. They were one of the five. They were one of the 5 worst FBS programs in the history of EMU football. Before him, they only made 2 bowl games ever.
They won a single conference championship.
Yes,
one.
And now they've went to multiple bowl games with him, and he's the best head coach they've ever had.
Oh yeah, I mean, just like looking at that program, I know some people in like the college football world that are pretty connected with Eastern. Like the way he runs that program is completely different than any other coach has ever coached there. Like you can tell he really cares, like about, I don't know, there's mixed reviews. I'm not going to get into that too much, but mixed reviews on people about him. But
I mean,
definitely a good coach.
How can you not like what he's done there for how bad they were and how consistent he's had them? If your criticism is he hasn't gotten us to the next level, well, did you really think that's doable at Eastern Michigan? I don't know that it is. So, they regressed last year. I don't know that you can have anything but good things to say about him, though.
Yeah, and to your point, I think I might be in the minority, but I think it's doable to get them to the next level. But the guy that got you here might not necessarily be the guy that gets you there, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah.
So like sometimes like a good, like let's say for example, stepping outside the MAC for a second, Franklin at Penn State.
James Franklin. Yep.
Franklin, great coach, just couldn't get them over that hump of like 10, 11 wins, and ultimately got fired. You know what I mean? So it's kind of that same thing where it's like the guy that might be able to get you to elevate your program can only maybe go so far. He
also took over from Bill O'Brien, who was a really good coach, and turned him around in that scandal after the Paterno stuff. So, but no, there is validity, I think, in what you're saying of elevating doesn't mean you're the guy that can take you to that elite next step. I think that's a very fair, thing to talk about. Yeah.
Because people say this a lot of like, oh, Eastern's in, a bad location being so close to U of M. But I think depending on sort of how, like, because it is literally like their campus is like 10 minutes from University of Michigan.
I didn't realize they were that close. Okay.
Like they're in the same county. You know what I mean? Like they're that like Ypsilanti, which is where Eastern is, and then Ann Arbor. Genuinely, like I have friends at Eastern that work in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like it's an interesting relationship in terms, but just being that close to such a big school does, I think in a lot of ways hinder your development as a program. But I also feel like some can be said about maybe like positioning yourself as a stepping stone of like, hey, we're always competitive. We're always competitive. We're gonna, churn out some good players. Like, I think ultimately, if you're Eastern, that's sort of the ultimate landing spot is as like a feeder into like a bigger school.
Maybe, yeah, that might be fair. Yeah.
Because like if you're the average Eastern fan, even for like us else in the MAC, like if you're consistently winning games, I don't think the average fan would care if there's a ton of roster turnover or not. If I'm being totally
No,
honest.
I don't think they would either. I think you're absolutely fair about that. Yeah. One thing I always and I always end with the two questions. So both regarding coaches in your conference. So looking at the MAC, there's 13 teams, so 13 head coaches. Only 2 of them have been at their school more than 4 years.
Isn't that crazy?
Though, of course, Chuck Martin and Chris Creighton, who we're talking about. So 11 guys in year 4 or less. So that makes these questions, well, the first one tougher. The second one, we'll see. But in the conference, which coach do you think is on the hottest seat going into this season?
Hottest seat. That's kind of hard because if you had asked me this a few months ago, I would, or like at this time last season, I would have said Jason Candle. Absolutely. But
I would have said Thomas Hammock, but they left and he's gone now.
Yeah. Geez, that is really, I think Chris Creighton, to be totally honest, like we were talking about before, I think he's probably him.
So, I had him way lower on my list, but I'm curious to see who else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think him, or I just like the problem is, like you said, so many of these guys are so new.
They are. Yeah.
Like you can't really start to create too much judgment yet. You know what I mean? But so I think outside of him, I don't really know if there is any other coach that is in that realm yet. You know what I mean?
I don't know that anybody's on the real hot seat this year. That's a very good point. I did say for mine, Joe Harris-Simiak. Sure, he's only going in year 2. You can't have another year as bad as last year. Like you got to at least win a couple games.
At least like one, genuinely. Like you can't lose to an FCS team at home again.
No.
You can't get embarrassed by basically every team you played. Like they looked, I don't want to dig on UMass too much, but they looked non-competitive in every single game they played.
Everybody out there, we are having a UMass episode next week, so tune in for us to talk about them. But no, I think what you're talking about is fair. And one thing that they must have known they were going to be pretty garbage again, because weeks 2 and 3 they scheduled FCS games. You can only count one of them for bowl games. They must have known we're not there. We just got to win some games. They play Rutgers in week 1. Then
that's cool. Just given the history there with if I'm not mistaken, their head coach was an assistant at Rutgers a couple of years ago.
Yes, he was D coordinator. Yeah. And he was at Minnesota before that. This is an interesting one. Week 4, we have a conference game. UMass at Sac State.
Okay.
But if I'm UMass, that is not what I want my first conference game to be. Traveling that far back, that's not kind. Yeah.
Like traveling that far just to play a team that like won't really tell you a lot about your team because they're also brand new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like obviously like UMass aren't the newcomers to the MAC anymore, but they're still only their second year being in the conference. You know what I mean?
In UMass, they're kind of the flip side of you guys. The schedule was kinder to them than it was to most teams. So you have Sac State, you have Ball, Akron, Bowling Green, Toledo. Like the teams we're not sure about, they got most of them. I feel like they got to win some games. The guy I had and I hate doing this, but having a first-year coach relatively high on the hot seat list, I put John Hauser there just because Ohio has really high expectations relative to the conference. Solich was great there. Tim Albin was great there. Last year with Smith, they were decent. And I just feel like they wouldn't let him they wouldn't have too long of a leash. Like, he's not getting fired after year 1. They'll let him go to year 2. But they're also higher expectation-wise than most teams in the conference.
I would agree with that, actually. I think it's a pretty good take. Like people I feel like people do kind of overlook that, but Ohio is like for as long as I can remember is always competitive. Like I feel like they might not be like contending for the MAC necessarily, but they're always competitive. They rarely get, I mean, they beat, West Virginia last year. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's a game that I feel like got swept under the rug pretty fast. You know what I mean?
And I think a lot of that happened partly because Jaheim Bell, not Jaheim Bell, that was the tight end. Jaheim White, WVU stud running back, tore his ACL in that game and then missed the rest of the year. So I think that's part of why. But it shouldn't matter for Ohio. It's still a massive win for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're going into a Power 5, Power 4, stadium, and you're.
And I think if I'm correct, I think they play in Ohio this year, because I think they scheduled it. I think they scheduled it. It was either a 2-1 or a 3-1. So I think this is the year the game is in Athens.
That's interesting, and that's honestly like very underrated college football town, in my opinion. I will say
everybody says that. Yeah, I've heard it's awesome. Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Yeah. So you said Creighton. I said Harris-Simiak, though no super hot seat. Now the second question I ask is a little bit more of a thinker, but what coach in the MAC with a really good season or two do you think gets a bigger job at a P4 school or a blue blood and so on? Who do you think that candidate could be?
I think obviously the popular answer is Lance Taylor.
It is.
Right? Like I'm just going to get to that. That's the popular answer.
Yeah.
I can also really see him being one of those guys that like stays around with the program for a long time. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of get that vibe from him just in the like limited things I've seen.
That's fair. Yeah.
I think truthfully, this pains me deep in my heart to say, but I think Drinkall is one of those guys personally. Absolutely. I mean, you think about it, he's got the Midwest roots. He played at Iowa, he went to college at the University of Iowa. Like the way that he was able to completely not just like right this ship, but we were a sinking ship last year.
Yeah.
And he completely like came in and like revamped everything. I think in a couple of years, like you have another, as long as there's constant progression forward, I think we can reasonably expect Power 4 teams.
And I think it's reasonable to think he might go to a Iowa, Kansas State, etc. Because he had coached in the state of Kansas before. Mm-hmm. The one that I would wonder about, Jeff Monken is almost 60. Would Drinkall go to Army if he retires within a couple of years? That I think is an interesting hypothetical. And if I'm in your shoes, I can understand losing him to Iowa. I wouldn't want to lose him to another G6 school.
No.
Like Army.
No.
But I think Army's an interesting one where you could reasonably see the pull and maybe he would do this. I don't know the answer.
Yeah. And that's actually interesting because I've heard a lot of different, opinions and takes. That's not one I think I've heard. So that is really interesting because, you're right. He is getting up there too. And then because I think the natural thought process is you look at Iowa's head coach, he's not getting any younger either. And so he's
Ferentz is by far the longest tenured FBS coach in the country.
It's like 20 some years now.
I believe this is going to be 23. Yes.
Yeah. So that's who knows? But who knows also? Because it's also one of those things where it's like maybe Drinkall is, like I mentioned before, is one of those guys that's going to stick around for like 5-6 years and really build a program.
The other guy I think will be, this is an in-state connection, but I think LeVar Woods could be in that mix for the Iowa job. Longtime special teams coordinator. He now went to Michigan State with Fitzgerald.
Yep.
The thought that he needed experience elsewhere before being a head coach, I think he could be in the mix at Iowa as well. So that'll be an interesting one. The other guy, and this guy was not good in year one last year. They went 4-8, but Eddie George.
Yep, that was awesome.
It won't take much. Like if you look at Drinkall, et cetera, these guys, Taylor, these guys have to win 10 games to get a bigger job. Eddie George might only have to win 8 because of the name recognition and characteristics he has. His threshold is lower to get a better job, I think, than the other guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, if you want to get developed into an NFL player, who better to do it than someone that played in that, right? I mean, I think that's a lot of people's mindsets. And obviously, he's been in the industry, like, first-time head coach, sure. First-time coach, I think. If I'm not mistaken.
He was at FCS at Texas State before.
You're right. You're right.
Tennessee State. Sorry.
Yeah, my apologies. You're right. Yeah. But first time as like an FBS coach. Yes. But I think he was one of those guys that people really were like, oh, he's a fluke. He's this. He's that. I think he's going to have Bowling Green in a pretty interesting place in the future, especially because sorry.
No, you go for it.
I was going to say Bowling Green is another one of those programs that somehow always seems to feel a competitive team.
Scott Leffler was a pretty good coach, I think. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So they, again, have a proud history. And so I think you couple that with the fact that, I mean, he's got great experience as being in the NFL, and that speaks volumes. You know what I mean? So I think he definitely could be one of those guys that gets the call in a couple of years.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about that. But I that's great answers there. And we have reached our conclusion here time-wise, but viewers, I want to thank you all for watching, and Mark, especially want to thank you for being here. Yeah, really fun episode. I had a good time. It was great having you on.
Yeah, it was awesome being able to talk about, Central Michigan, being able to share some ball knowledge with people that might not necessarily know what we're about,
Absolutely. Yeah. Want to thank you again and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you. You too.